Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's free webinar, The True Meaning of Agility, with our guest speaker, repeat guest speaker, Don Haynes. This is two, three?
I think so.
Yeah, two or three, yeah. I know on one podcast I listen to, they have this thing where if you're a guest 5 times, you get a special gold jacket. I don't know, maybe we'll do that. Anyway, get your measurements ready. So I'm Rex Black. I'm president of RBCS. We are a worldwide testing and quality assurance firm serving clients ranging from small startups to Fortune 20 global enterprises. And since 1994, we've delivered insight and confidence to hundreds of clients around the world. We have a team of international consultants that deliver customized training, consulting, and expert services to companies that are looking to improve their test and quality assurance practices. I am happy to welcome again Dawn Haynes and to introduce her. For those of you who weren't there last time and not familiar with Dawn, she has been in IT for over 35 years in various capacities: system administrator, project management, DBA, tech support, QA, testing, build engineering, training, course development, and consulting. So pretty much the whole gamut there. Though it looks like you may not have spent a whole lot of time writing code. So you personally
not a whole lot of time.
Not to blame for any bugs that anybody might be dealing with in their life. So
no, but I can write them really well. That's what I learned.
Write a bug report, right? Yeah. With all these different past perspectives, Dawn now just calls herself a testing and quality coach. So that keeps it simple. Dawn has observed throughout her career that the challenges we have with software quality and how to fit testing into projects are fairly systemic. Experience in insurance, healthcare, custom software, and commercial software. She's seen the same issues plague teams and organizations over and over again, which parenthetically is why it's possible to actually be a professional consultant, because the problems are really, really common. With all that in the toolbox, Dawn endeavors to continue learning from practitioners, teams, and organizations, and to work with them to find opportunities to better meet collective goals. So today's session, Dawn is going to answer some questions about what the true meaning of agility is for testers, and what does it mean to be agile? Is it just an antonym for clumsy? Are you following Scrum? Are you doing DevOps? Et cetera, et cetera. So Dawn thinks that it's maybe agile is different than these things. So join Dawn for a deep dive here into what true agility should look like. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please submit them throughout the presentation, but please note that they will be answered at the end, and I will be following that rule too. I'll be jotting down my own questions as we go, and we'll answer those, ask them at the end. So Dawn, over to you.
Thanks so much, Rex. Hello, everybody. Great to see some familiar names, not faces, but I remember what you look like. It hasn't been that long ago. So great to have you, and for folks that don't know me, welcome. Really appreciate you joining us today, and it's a very special day for me. It's my birthday, so thank you for helping me celebrate it, because I like this stuff, or I wouldn't be doing it today. So I want to call your attention to this awesome picture, not this one, but this one on the other side of this slide with this dog, beautiful dog. Who's participating in agility training or trials. And if you've ever had an animal, go through this process, at the beginning, they're not so slick. And there's a lot of mistakes that get made and, little bumps and bruises. But when they practice and learn, going through a field, right, of challenges like this one, it's just amazing to watch. It's elegance in action. And if this was a video, I was a little cautious about sharing video with you all through this platform, but you can imagine the dog is weaving through these poles and juking left and right and changing direction seamlessly, almost effortlessly, and fast. And that reminds me of what agility is really all about. How quickly can we pivot and respond and keep our stride and achieve a goal instead of getting, um, I'd say, blocked by the fact that there's something in our path again and again and again and again. So I want you to keep the dog in mind because you're going to be coming on this trip with us. And for now, I want to focus on you. So, how do you think of yourself? I mean, it's great to have you join us today. But if you were doing introductions with us, how would you describe yourself? Name, maybe company that you work with, maybe something about your experience, maybe your job title. So I want you to keep this in mind. How do you identify yourself as a software tester, a system tester? By the way, I think those two things are different. So very interesting if you might think they're the same or choose one or the other. How about a test manager? If we're talking about agile context or potentially DevOps, I know a lot of what I'd call homeless test managers. Really difficult for them to find a place in the new scheme of things. And it takes a while to figure out what the opportunities are. So you might be kind of feeling like you're on the sidelines. That's a tough place to be. How about a member of a QA team that actually doesn't exist anymore? Because all the people that were previously doing a testing job or function have now been distributed into agile teams, scrum teams, maybe Kanban teams, and now there's no QA department or silo. That could be interesting. How about a quality engineer? That's out there. That's a nice one. How about a test architect? That's definitely transferable. Manual tester. I hear a lot of people during introductions at conferences and training classes say, I am a manual tester. I am an automation engineer. And I overheard a great rant by Michael Bolton. No, not that one. And no, not that one. Michael Bolton of Develop Sense in Toronto, Canada, who has lots of rants about interesting things. This one caught my attention because someone walked up to our little test lab at a conference and self-identified as a manual tester. He went, wait a minute. I think you're a tester. I think that's what you actually are. And some of your testing might be manual, and sometimes you might use a tool or automate something, but testing is testing regardless of what mechanism you use to accomplish it. And I think that's really an iceberg to dig into. Like, what does that mean to you? And what is the place for a manual tester in an agile context? Is there room for it anymore? Does everybody have to learn to automate? I'm not going to answer that question for you. You can answer that question for you. Think about it. How do you self-identify? And with that, and maybe in you joining us today, are you concerned about the trajectory of your career? Do you have confidence and comfort and believe you have some longevity or as much longevity as you would like in your career? What are those concerns? Where did they come from? So I've been exposed to enough to think that you might think about being concerned and make sure that you're kind of looking across the landscape and looking out for yourself, right? This is about making sure you're creating a space for you in the future tense, not just where you are today. So we're going to talk about future tense and how did we get to this place where we've got organizations saying we don't employ testers, Google being one of them. We employ SDETs, software development engineer in test. Great. If you have a testing resume, you don't get an interview at Google. How did we get there? A few years ago, big company called Salesforce. You might be familiar with them. They followed in Google's footsteps and said, we're going to be like Google. We don't have testers anymore. So all y'all that have a testing job title have to learn programming and will be tested on that, and you'll interview with teams. And if you can contribute development work to teams, then you can stay employed here. And if you can't, there is no place for you here. Whoa, that's big writing on the wall. How does that happen? By the way, I don't necessarily think Salesforce is Google, but they haven't imploded yet. So how did this all happen? Let's just put a timeline together for you to give you some perspective. You've heard about Kanban. It's been around since the 40s. Scrum, the early 90s. Extreme programming, where Agile has adopted a lot of practices and values, the mid 90s. And I got into software at about in the 90s. I started to work for a high-tech company. And in two of those companies, they had no QA, no job title of a software tester or a QA anything at all. No structured testing, just people running around the office saying, hey, we got stuff set up in a conference room and pizza. Would you like to come and test stuff? It was fascinating. But in both of those cases, testing was being done, just not by somebody who had a testing job title. That's an interesting thing to consider, because both of these organizations created software that didn't suck at all. They were exceptional, both of them. And when I think back on it, like at the time, I didn't know any better. Now I'm like, oh, how could you not have any software testing? How could you not have a QA group or department? Well, guess what? It's this stuff. It's not a bunch of cowboy development going on. It's knowing that testing needs to be baked into the development process. And there's a lot of testing baked in to Agile, the Agile Manifesto and the principles. I'll call your attention to the principles in a moment. How we got to DevOps, been around since about 2008, if you didn't know that. And with all of this behind us, in 2011, a guy named Alberto Saboya, a lead architect at Google, did a keynote called Test is Dead. And so if you haven't listened to this talk, it's on the YouTubes. Google it, you'll find it. And I invite you to listen to it. It's about an hour and it's painful. You will get angry. You will be frustrated. I suggest you bring pen and paper and write things down. And if at all possible, suffer through it. Listen to what he's saying, because he's kind of explaining how it works there and how, well, testing is done, but not necessarily by people that have the role and function solely of doing the testing. So he's making a prediction, kind of like Nostradamus, only, again, he's a little bit early in the curve here. So a year later, James Whitaker, Jason Arbon, and Jeff Carollo wrote this book, How Google Tests Software, and it has created ripples in the industry where in, I'd say, management ranks and in some organizations who are looking to optimize or refine their processes, save money, save time, deliver more frequently to customers, hey, testing looks like a pretty good thing to chop at. And this book says, yeah, go ahead. You should understand what this book is talking about and what Alberto tried to communicate a year earlier. And by the way, poor dude got really, really flamed. It's really, really challenging message that he is trying to deliver. And in 2019, he did another YouTube video, Test is Dead Explained. We really tried to clarify what he was saying. So if you can get through the first one, and then, you know, maybe take a break, take a breather, get some oxygen, then go see the second one and really try to internalize this message, because it is happening all around you. And if it hasn't gotten to your organization and your team yet, it doesn't mean it won't. So I think it's important for us to know what's being said in the industry so that we can respond to it appropriately. And this is a big, big message on the wall that, in case you have missed, I want you to take into consideration thinking about the future. Because when we think about kind of where the industry is right now, Agile is certainly more common. DevOps has taken off. In some organizations, things are humming along. And in other organizations, they say they do Agile and they do Agile-ish, fragile. We now have a professional name for it. It's called hybrid Agile, which just basically means we do whatever the heck we want and we call it Agile. So there's some aspect of it that might be Agile, but you need to figure out what that is, because it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing all of these things. So I like to think about, instead of, are we doing Agile? Are we accomplishing our goal? And will Agile values and principles help us achieve that goal? I've worked in organizations where the answer was yes, absolutely. And so I have some confidence that this can actually work. So let me pull out of here a couple of things that I think are important for us to be aware of sitting in the Agile Manifesto that really speak to some key underpinnings of agility. A couple things here: satisfy the customer, welcome changing requirements, and deliver working software frequently. Those kind of go together. And they really suggest that we need to be responsive. Okay. So as customer needs change, as technology changes, as the market changes, we have to be willing to satisfy the customer, even if that means we're going to change requirements. And how are we going to figure that out? How are we going to get that message? We need to deliver software more frequently so we can get the feedback. It's not just let's roll out every single thing we come up with, no matter how bad it is. That's not the goal of, say, MVP, minimum viable product. That's not the goal. It's let's get something in their hands so we can get feedback, actionable feedback, so we know what to do next. So we know if we're on the agility field as right, the dogs meeting the challenges and trying to reach the goal, do we juke left? Do we juke right? We need information to know that. How does it work internally? There's a few things that help us collaborate. We need motivated people. We need face-to-face interactions. And we do this with self-directed and self-organizing teams. That's fine. That applies to everybody. That's great. That's great. Now, when it comes to some of these other things, the measure of progress in Agile is through demonstrably working software. Not how much testing have we done, not how much development work have we done. What do we have that's working right now? That is the key measure of progress. That's a huge shift. And it applies to both development activities and testing activities, so we should be aware of this. Sustainable development and continuous attention to technical excellence and simplicity speak to our ability to pivot. If we set these things up for ourselves, we will be able to respond to change with the least painful amount of effort. It will be manageable. And without doing those things, it's a hairball. So it matters. And it matters not only to development, but it also matters to testing in our plans, in our processes, in our guidelines, in what we choose to document, how we choose to document, tools that we decide to use and implement. All of those things hold true for us in testing as well as development. So we should kind of be aware of how that could affect us because we need to be agile too. And then the last thing here is the notion of continuous improvement being baked in. Agile doesn't come to town and say, y'all should do this and y'all should do that and make sure you do this. And if you do all those things, then you're good, you reach your goals. No, no, you could do all the agile stuff. You could do all the scrummy stuff. You could do all the Kanban stuff and not reach your goals, because if you're relying on those things to tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, you're missing the point of self-organizing teams. The team has to figure out how to reach their goal. And in order to do that, they need flexible and adaptable processes that meet their needs. So they need the latitude to do that, to flex and change. That is a core principle of agility. Gotta have it. Absolutely gotta have it. So with this kind of in mind, our takeaways from the Agile Manifesto, the principles, we want to be able to move quickly. Have you heard the notion of fast fail? That's one of those ideas that enables us to juke left or juke right if we're going in the wrong direction. But you absolutely need feedback so you know that you're going in the wrong direction. So many pieces of work that get done throughout an agile process need to be aligned with a mechanism, some testing mechanism, doesn't matter who does it, that enables quick feedback, which could also be demos, which could also be rolling things out to customers to enable this. Because now, when we've got that feedback, we can plan for what we're going to change and change and change and change again. And that's kind of where we need to be. Agility is all about getting ready for the change that's coming. You know it's coming. There's no surprises there. You know it's coming. Now what we need to do is get okay with it. Now, I believe there's kind of a human challenge in all of this. And that is, we don't like change, man. We just don't. It doesn't go very easy at all. We want things to be known. We want confidence in them. We want them to be tried and true. And that enables us to move forward and believe that we're going to have a good outcome. But if things are changing and flexing and adapting so much, we start to lose our footing and we start to lose our confidence. And that could be risky to everything that we're doing. So we need to acknowledge this. Comfort zone's a beautiful place, but that's not where innovation happens. That's not where true agility happens at all. But if we're willing to recognize this about ourselves, then we're in the right place to meet a challenge. And here's the challenge. I would like you to be able to think liminally. And no, I didn't make up that word. I just didn't. I read a book called Liminal Thinking by a guy named Dave Gray. And let me read this to you because I think this is very poignant in talking about agility and being responsive. So it says liminal is a word that means boundary, doorway, or portal. Not this way or that, not the old way or the new way, but neither and both. Now, it's a state of ambiguity or disorientation. I'm sure you felt that. That precedes a breakthrough to a new kind of thinking. I am sure you've been in this place and it's very uncomfortable. Let's call it the space between. You've kind of decided to abandon what you're doing. You need to find something better. You just don't know what that is. Well, guess what? In order to get to the other side, you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So, liminal thinking is a kind of psychological agility that enables you to navigate these times of transition. This is a tool that we need to hone if we're going to survive the next decade or so in this industry, I believe. It involves the ability to read your own beliefs and needs, the ability to read others' beliefs and needs, and the habit, creating a habit, that's hard to do, of continually evaluating, validating, and changing beliefs in order to better meet needs. Wow. Wow. That's a big, big message there. And the Agile Manifesto doesn't really get at the depth of what it's going to take to really embrace those principles and make it happen. So, for example, TDD or test first development, that or just automate everything, stuff like that is not the answer to this. This is an internal answer. So, I want to play with just one idea here. And I invite you to test your own flexibility about this because agility is about flexibility. It's about willingness, it's about openness, and getting in that uncomfortable place. So I invite you to get uncomfortable about the notion of giving up ownership for quality. I get asked this question all the time in classes, at conferences. Who's ultimately responsible for quality? Well, you've just told me you're on an agile team. Guess what? It's the team, or more to the point, the product owner to provide direction about it, the team to deliver it. Does that make sense? Everybody got that? So, can you change your beliefs around that? Can you change your attitude about that? Can you change habits related to that, like telling people what a quality product looks like and believing it's up to you if it's not really up to you anymore? If the rules have changed, we need to adapt and show up differently. For example, what if your job title was taken away from you and you're no longer a QA, a QE, a test architect, but you're now a team member? Yay, go team. What does that mean for you? I think this is a struggle. And I used to work for a company that started with a very large letter X. And I heard about this team in downtown Manhattan. They were servicing copiers and printers, and they were the worst performing team in the entire company. And the company said, we're going to run an experiment with y'all. We're going to put you on one team and you're going to figure out how to make this better. You're not going to have a manager. You're going to be a self-managed work group, and you're going to have one performance appraisal. Y'all just think about that for a moment. Like, would you seriously tolerate your management telling you you no longer get a personal performance appraisal? You get a team-based one. I think that would change your attitude and your beliefs and your habits over time. And that's what they shared. Initially, it was bad. It was ugly. And over time, they became family that supported each other, and they went from the worst performing team to the best performing team in that company in less than a year. So I have faith that this can happen, but there's a lot of hurdles for us to navigate along the way. So I invite you to think about, well, what would you transform into if you can no longer be the thing that you have acclimated to? So could you transform into the notion of a testing and quality coach, or as Atlassian talks about it, um, quality assistance, not quality control, not quality assurance, but quality assistance. What's that assistance? So what could we assist with? Maybe we could share our knowledge. I bet we have some that's valuable to others on the team. Maybe we could lead some peer review of tests and provide feedback and learn from each other. Or how about doing test design together, either pairing or mobbing? Let's get together as a team and figure out what we need for a smoke test and what we need for a regression test for this level of our, continuous integration pipeline. What do we, the royal we, need? Instead of everybody working in their own dark corners and silos, how about we do more of that together? I think there's some real opportunities there, not to tell people what to do, but to guide and influence with the knowledge and experience that we have. I think there's some beautiful opportunities to collaborate. For example, paired testing, more exploratory testing. So could you pair with a developer, pair with a product owner, pair with a customer maybe? So I think there's opportunities. There's places that we can go that might look different than how we envision our role now. But if we take that on, I'm not going to suggest there's no risk. So the number one risk, I believe, is having an identity crisis. Who am I? What do I do? What do I call myself? Here's just one thing I can suggest for dealing with that. The focus in Agile, DevOps, all the things inspired by the Agile manifesto and principles, put the focus on testing and not testers. Just as it was in the 70s and early 80s before black box software testing and the art of software testing were published, suggesting developer mindset and tester mindset are very different skills. And so we need different people to do it. Here's the deal. If we focus on the testing, not the testers, we can get it done. We can get it done. It doesn't matter what we call it, and it doesn't matter what we call ourselves. We can get it done. It's just all about putting the focus on the right thing. So collaboration is going to be very, very key. We can't hide out. We need to constantly engage. We need to acknowledge responsibility for quality must be shared. We must build it in. We must own it together, or things are going to fall apart. And I'm sure many of you have been exposed to that. But I've also seen situations where it works beautifully. And this is what they've attained, shared responsibility for quality. The notion that the way we do DevOps or the way we do Scrum or the way we do Agile, if we just do all those things, it'll fix the rest. It doesn't. It doesn't. You can show up to your daily stand-up every day, and if all you talk about and all you focus on is testing, well, then we haven't shifted much. We are still operating in silos. So let's start with some knowledge, some provoking information like Alberto's test is dead talk, and maybe some things from this, but let it settle a little bit because it's got to get into your tester heart and soul. It's got to get into your tester gut. It takes time to change those perspectives and how we operate. So be patient with yourself and know that it starts here. Let it trickle down. And then continuous improvement is really something that's baked into agility. There's no suggestion that we know the future and we can know the best solution for the thing that we don't know about yet. So we've got to prepare ourselves to be on the lookout for things that can affect what we're doing, how we're doing them, and be positioned to juke, to change. Okay. So the notion that we can take a lot of best practices with us might not be a great one if we really want to get on the agility train. Okay, so that's the message. That's what's here. But before I open it up for Q&A, I'm going to throw down a challenge, just a challenge to all of you. I'd like you to write down one thing that you think needs to change in your organization to increase agility, to solve a problem, to meet a need, to reach a goal, not to be more agile, not to have more agility, to be more agile, to be more scrummy, to get the DevOps check boxes all checked off. That's not the goal, but to meet a need. Okay. All right. Now that you got that, I want you to own it. I want you to understand that you see that as a problem, that you see that as an opportunity, and that you have a very unique perspective on that. And you can influence people. You absolutely can, but you can't do a thing if you don't own it. So I really invite you to think about, okay, that's the thing, not 10 things, just pick one at a time and say, all right, what can I do to influence this? And here's my suggestion. Create a little 5-minute lightning talk, just quickie, soapbox presentation about that thing. Hey, I think we can take an opportunity to shift this here. Let's talk about it. Maybe we open that up at a daily stand-up. Maybe we open that up during a sprint retrospective. But keep the momentum going. Talk about it. Inform as many people as you can. Try to be a champion for that thing and see what kind of traction it gets. And then next week, try a different one, because continuous improvement would suggest that there's always a new challenge to meet up there. So I don't believe that our time is limited in terms of our career. And I don't believe that we can't eke out not just more agility, but more success and have the ability to be in that state of constantly changing things without being knocked off our game. So I believe we can meet the agility challenge on the field. And I believe that you can spearhead that in your organizations. So I hope we shared some ideas with you that I'm going to imagine have crossed your bow before. I hope you got a new idea or two to try, and I'll hand it over to Rex to give us some comments or questions that have come in. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up today, and look forward to the questions.
All right, great. Thank you, Don. Yep, we do have a couple questions from the audience here. One is from Jamie.
Hey, Jamie.
Says, liminal thinking sounds like it could become a weather vane, sort of I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. And I can kind of see that. How do you make sure that you use that to set a direction rather than kind of just in the wind?
So the suggestion isn't that we use it to identify a bunch of opportunities for change, but rather when we need something to change significantly, that we can find a way to be uncomfortable long enough to find a solution, instead of slingshotting back to the thing that we did, the thing that we're comfortable with, and just staying in that happy place. So the concept of liminal thinking is just to give us a tool in our toolbox for managing the internal chaos of change that happens within us, that makes us resistant, that makes it hard for us, and hopefully will enable us to open a door. Thanks, Yuri. So does that make sense, Jamie? Thank you for pointing that out. We okay?
We'll give him a minute to type his response, and that makes sense to me. Yuri, by the way, posted a link here. You're probably familiar with this, liminalthinking.com.
Yeah.
Go ahead and drop that in the chat for everybody.
There's some great stuff in that book.
More resources, but I mean, I'm assuming that goes with the book. So there we go. I got a question from Neil. Says, in the past, we used to test against human language requirements, which are of varying precision, usually imperfect, but then against state transition diagrams, entity life histories, etc. Would such UML style representations contravene the simplicity is essential agile principle if people tried to use them? That is model-based testing instead of or in addition to user stories, BDD, etc.
I think that's a great question, Neil. And I worked for Rational Software for almost 10 years, and I would consider them to be like the use case company. So business models, right, written from a user perspective, and kind of following along, Phil Crosby's ideology of if you could just write the perfect requirement and implement it, quality is free. That was his message, right? I don't need to test if we just build the quality in, if we could have the perfect requirement. Well, I saw very few organizations able to implement use cases and all the various diagrams that would help us do that, because I do think they're a better communicator, radiator of information than English. I really do. But I think it's time consuming. I think there are still ways to get it wrong, or at least I've experienced that with many customers over almost a decade. And I think the message somewhere embedded in that notion of Agile is, you know what, even if you did all that and the changing requirement hit you in the head, well, now you did all that work and it's over and you get to do it all again. And I think there's a resistance to that heavier sort of way of expressing requirements. But that doesn't mean it can't be useful. I would still prefer a diagram like a business process flow diagram, or I was in DBA, entity relationship diagram in UML. Give me a sequence diagram and I'm a happy camper. Well, if you got that, that's great. But if you haven't built it yet, or you haven't decided what it should be yet, maybe that would slow you down. And if you built something, I'd say maybe more in a little R&D style and then got feedback, then you would know what was right. Just a thought about some of the, I'd say contrary positions of those two things. And they are definitely contrary positions. Thanks, Neil.
I guess I'd say to that, I think automation can be a pretty heavyweight way of expressing your requirements as well.
Mm-hmm. Like cucumber test.
Sure. I mean, if you're developing a bunch of feature files with a lot of BDD in them, I mean, I don't know that is necessarily more lightweight than use cases. Of course, it does lend itself to automation, but you're still in that situation where there's a lot of rework. I think that's also true contra to some of the promoters of TDD itself too, is that you end up, if you built a large overhead of overhead is the wrong word, but large infrastructure of automated unit tests via TDD, that's an investment in the way things work now. And if you change it, then you have to update that regardless of what that investment is. And the question just really gets to what's the return on that investment, right? I mean, I would say that whether we're talking about use cases or feature files or automated unit tests, if they're helping you make sure that what you're building is what people need and that you're moving forward and not going in circles, then you're probably getting positive ROI out of it.
Exactly. And I think that's the important analysis to do. Don't let anybody tell you what is the right way to do it. You've got to figure out what serves you best. So don't be lulled by, whatever messages might be out there. And simple might not work for everything. Absolutely not. So one of the companies I worked for did OCR technology, optical character recognition. No way to simplify that nonsense at all. AI technology, neural net technology, really, really complicated decision engines, really complicated state models. It was very messy. But once things got out there, version 2, 3, 4, whatever changes we were making, all of the documentation that we had at the beginning didn't get updated. So when we needed to know how things worked, we had to use the software anyway. We had to do exploratory testing to understand how things work now.
Or you have to
So,
test themselves and their results, right?
oh,
I've had
yeah,
many people tell me that the requirements are not kept up to date, but we have tests and we have test results, and that's what tells us if the software actually works, whether
exactly.
it's automated or not, right?
Yep, yep, that's where we got to.
So I have a reaction from Jamie here on the liminal thing, coming back to that. And so he says, it strikes me that timing is critical. If I try something new and it does not pan out, my manager might consider it a failure. And too many managers believe that failure is a firing issue. I will be the first to admit that my failures were likely better for my career in the long run, but in the long run, we are all dead, to quote, that's not Schumpeter, it's the other famous economist.
Mm-hmm.
Managers definitely need to explicitly authorize liminal thinking. So, there's a thought there that if your ability to experiment with that kind of stuff does depend on permission structures in your organization.
Yes, trust and latitude, big part of what Agile kind of lays down, and that enables us to be Agile,
Yeah,
right?
or
Without
not,
those
right?
things, right? We're kind of boxed in. But Jamie, I would say the concept of liminal thinking is just to allow you to approach new ideas, not necessarily, figure out which one to decide. It's not about that. It's about being comfortable enough with the unknown to be able to make recommendations. Now, Agile proponents would say the faster we can fail, the faster we can learn, and the faster we can do it better. So there really is a component of understanding failure is necessary to investigate and to understand so that we can make better decisions as opposed to make no decision. That's what's on the opposite sides of that teeter-totter, if you will. And absolutely agreed. If management doesn't buy into those specific notions, then it's going to be very hard for the team to be agile. And I see that dichotomy a lot. The team is expected to deliver more frequently, high quality, all of these things, but not given the latitude to do it. Sometimes not given the tools to do it. So that would absolutely get in your way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, Jamie. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jamie's rejoinder to that or response is, in my experience, managers screw up Agile more than anything else. And,
True that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be Agile necessarily. There is that just, there can be company cultures, going back to Deming of, drive out fear and all that good stuff. If you're in a company culture where failure and bad news are just not tolerated, then, that's going to be an issue. So
Absolutely.
that is hard to fix from the bottom up.
It is, and just be aware, liminal thinking isn't suggesting you make a decision. Just get comfortable in the in-between place where you don't know what to decide yet. So you don't have this knee-jerk reaction of just going back to what you always did because it's comfortable.
Sure.
Right. And just recognize that trying to jump that chasm is uncomfortable. Like you already know that, but really embracing that, I think makes us braver. And I think gives us opportunities that we wouldn't normally have. So I find it a useful concept, and I want to harness it more in real life and get the word into the mainstream.
Okay. Well, liminal thinking, the word of the day or words of the day. Yeah, I would just say that as a follow-up to this, for those of you who found this interesting, for another take on like surviving Agile reality, go to the RBCS YouTube channel, which you can see listed here. and give a listen to my Shift Left and Friends webinar, which kind of talks about maybe from a more technical perspective, the skill sets. Thank you. The skill sets that are going to be needed to kind of survive and thrive in an agile reality. So I'm going to go ahead and wind us down here. We ran a little bit long, but hopefully it was interesting. And since most people stayed on, it must have been interesting to people. So thank you, Dawn, for taking time out of your birthday. I'll let you go back to eating cake or whatever. if you have no bread, as Marie Antoinette would put it, we'll let you eat cake. We have a last minute thank you from Yuri. So thank you, Dawn and Rex. It was good. So there we go. Kudos to you. So to all the attendees, thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed this free webinar. We do these as a service to the software testing community because at RBCS, we are a not just for profit company, but we do need to keep the lights on. So if you enjoy our free webinars and feel that they demonstrate solid insights into the kinds of testing challenges you face, please make RBCS your preferred software testing vendor for any and all expert services, consulting, or training. Happy to provide a quote for any such help you might need. You can see email address there, info@rbcs-us.com. So again, thank you, Dawn. Thanks to all the attendees, and we'll see you guys at the next one.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Think liminal.
Think liminal, but not subliminal.